Keeper. And presenting for Keeper today is Travis Griffith. He is a solutions engineer. Travis, I want to thank you for being here today. It is great to see you. I'm going to now turn this over to you. You have the floor, sir.
Hello and welcome to this presentation of the Keeper cybersecurity platform. We want to make the best use of your time today, so I'm just going to speak at a high level. We'll be covering the Enterprise Password Manager, Keeper Secrets Manager, and Connections Manager components. So let's go ahead and get started. When you first deploy Keeper Security, you'll log into the admin console. In this console, you can provision users fully automated, connect your single sign-on providers like Azure, Entra, Okta, or dozens of others. You can manage the security experience for your users and add them to teams, and create teams that match up to your existing security groups. The admin console also provides dozens of reports for compliance and monitoring security. The next thing that I want to talk about is the node structure. So with this architecture, it's going to provide your admins with a way to organize users into distinct groupings, similar to organizational units in Active Directory. The administrator can create nodes based on location, department, division, or any other structure. Therefore matching up to your organizational structure is simple. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the single sign-on integration for Entra, Azure, and Okta. So you can see this Okta node. I'm going to go ahead to the provisioning section. There's the single sign-on connection, the SCIM provisioning. And what this will do is bring your users and Okta push groups over. Your Okta push groups will become teams within Keeper. And then looking at Azure, you can see that the setup is Entra Azure. The setup is very similar. Single sign-on, SCIM provisioning. Your Entra security groups will become teams within Keeper as well. And so the goal behind this was to reduce your administrative overhead, to give you more full control over the system. And the setup process for this is simple. It's roughly about 30 minutes. And we do support integrating with any SAML 2.0 identity provider. The next thing that we want to talk about is roles. So the goal here is to give your administrators the ability to enforce your security posture and adapt to the needs of your organization. So I'm just going to briefly pop up these enforcement policies, and we'll talk about passwordless authentication, the biometrics. So you can see we have iOS Touch ID, Face ID options, Mac Touch ID, Android biometrics, Windows Hello. On the two-factor authentication front, we could enforce two-factor. We could determine what amount or how often that two-factor is enforced with different flavors of the platform. I also have control over which multi-factor authentication methods are allowed. So security keys, anything that uses the FIDO2 standard. We do support TOTP, have smartwatch multi-factor authentication, and then SMS text messaging, and we have integrations with RSA and Duo. Moving on, let's go ahead and talk about credential sharing, credential and file sharing. So with Keeper, we have the ability to set you up with a top-down sharing model where you control everything from the top down, or you can implement a more diplomatic sharing structure. So your security groups, when you're actually executing the shares for ease of use, your security groups from within Azure Entra can be linked to shared folders. And so those, you can see all the teams right here. Those would represent your security groups from Azure Entra. Active Directory or Okta push groups can also be linked to the shared folders for the purposes of sharing. So effectively, your identity provider is managing the membership of that shared folder for you. And then coming down here, talking about file sharing, you see I've got some file uploads in here. When you upload files into a record, those files are fully encrypted as part of the record. And this is going to be a really simple, phone book type of share. Give them can edit, can view permissions, or if I change ownership, that would literally transfer the files from my vault into another vault. So those options are all on the table. And then the dark web monitoring is the next item that we wanted to cover. So with the dark web monitoring, we're going to notify you when credentials are compromised out on the dark web. And as you can see, the end user gets notifications of that in addition to the administrator, right? And then the next item I want to cover is reporting and alerts. So with reporting and alerts, we're tracking roughly 180 plus security events in the system. And with this, you have all the capabilities that you would expect. So having the ability to filter by the timeline, what users do we want to get data from, what vaults do we want to get data from, and then we can track events like open record, filled record, breach watch record. And I can isolate these reports down to a specific record ID if I want to track all the activity of a record, or if I want to track all the activity within a shared folder, which is a common use case. And then the next item I want to talk about is alerts, real-time alerts. You're going to have the same 180 plus events, and you can see we have them nicely categorized. Same 180 plus events available for real-time alerts. And you can send those to your email address, to a text message, or to a Slack or Teams channel using a webhook. We have strong documentation on that to make it easy to set up as well. And then we can push your security events to a SIM provider. You can see all the most popular SIM providers listed here: Azure, Datadog, Elastic, Splunk, and so on. Any SIM provider that supports a syslog push will be able to send the data to. The data goes out securely using a TLS tunnel. And then the next thing we want to do, let's go ahead and switch gears. We're going to start talking about the secrets manager. And the first thing I want to talk about is the password rotation. So with this platform, essentially, you'll have the ability to rotate passwords fully automated, and that will be service accounts, Active Directory accounts, databases, local machines. That's all supported. We can also stop and restart services as part of the automation, and you'll get some strong attestation reports for compliance if you need them. So, and we do rotations within the local network, within Azure, within AWS. We are starting to get into software as a service accounts, rotating credentials through APIs. In addition to passwords, we can rotate SSH keys. And in lieu of that, I did want to show you an example of the rotation record and some options for configuring that. So these are the password rotation settings. I can rotate on demand, on a schedule, daily, weekly, monthly, or off business hours, 3 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, that type of thing. What kind of entropy do I want to generate? So once I have all my settings in place, basically I can rotate that password. The current password ends in 3D, so we'll go ahead and get that rotated. And that did give us a new password. So that's password rotation, and every credential can be on its own schedule. And the next thing that we're going to talk about is protecting your DevOps environments. So getting into these integrations, we want to protect your DevOps environments from secret sprawl. So that would be your privileged credentials, your database credentials, API keys, can be tokenized within these various CI/CD environments. And the integrations that we have available there are the most popular CI/CD offerings: Ansible, Jenkins, GitHub, and then also containerized offerings like Docker and Kubernetes. With each use case, the setup process is only going to be about 15 to 30 minutes, and that's going to be a common theme with the secrets manager. With the password rotations that we just talked about, typically those are 15 to 30 minutes to set up as well, which is very refreshing, we've been told by our clients. And then the SDKs that we have available for this platform are some of the more popular languages that you would expect. So Java, Kotlin, JavaScript, Python, .NET, and Golang. And again, the setup process for these is the same, roughly 15 to 30 minutes. The next thing that I want to show you is the connection manager. So if we'll go ahead and bring up the connection manager portal. And this is a method to grant privileged access without exposing the username and password or the username and the PEM key. So I'm just going to go ahead and get into this RDP session. You'll notice that I don't need the username and password. I just get right in very quickly and easily. Now, with this system, we have full chain of custody on the connections, and we can make things more secure by isolating or air gapping this connection, meaning that your users would only be able to access remote desktop connections from the connection manager. So that gives you a superior security posture. And then, I could add connections if I wanted to. So an SSH session, a database session, as well a local machine session. So very quick and easy for me to get logged in, to switch back and forth between sessions. And then your clipboard is going to behave as per normal. File uploads will be drag and drop. You do have control in the session as to whether you want them to be able to copy paste. So there's a lot baked into this. And then the next thing that I wanted to show you is the capability to memorialize these sessions to have the full chain of custody over everything that's happening. So let me just exit these sessions really quick, and then we'll get to the admin side of things. So within your connection history, we can see who logged in, what was the date and the time, how long were they in the session, and what session did they get in, and then we have the recording, so I can view everything that happened while that session was active. So this is the video recording. Again, we do support transcription, so you could see a transcript of all the commands that were entered in during a session, if you like, as well. So if you're setting up a new connection, these are all native sessions. So basically for a new connection, I would just select the protocol. So that's remote desktop, SSH, Telnet, VNC, Kubernetes. On the database side, MS SQL, MySQL, and Postgres. And then we also have the capability to import connections from a CSV if you have hundreds of connections to configure, in addition to an API connector that you could push connection information to. So there's a lot of options to get this configured. And again, because these are native sessions, it's agentless. There's nothing to install on the machines that you're connecting to. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about with this is, so we showed the 8 protocols that we have support for. We have added a 9th protocol, which is HTTP, HTTPS. And what that would allow you to do is connect to web-based sessions with a username and password that the user never sees. So it'll automatically fill in the username and password into a web-based session. And that gives you control over the session so that you can record it similar to these other sessions. So that opens up tens of thousands of possibilities for controlling remote sessions over the web. And then the last 2 items that I wanted to show is our import process. So with the imports, those are rather robust. We do support imports from all the popular browsers, Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Edge, and Opera. And then other password managers, imports from JSON and CSV. And then another item that we have that's extremely popular is our family plan. So every business user is going to get a free family plan, and that includes a license with 5 vaults, and those are for personal use. So at a minimum, your business users will have their own vault that they can store their personal credentials in, and it's a way to distinguish the personal credentials from the business credentials, and those accounts are completely separate. Also, you see the ability to switch accounts to toggle between those vaults right here. So again, that is a very popular feature, and anyways, that's the platform in a nutshell. Feel free to reach out with any questions.
Okay. Well, that was an awesome interview. An awesome overview, Travis. Really good information. I love seeing the demos and how the product works in the real world. And now we've got the first poll question of the event, or the first one for this. We appreciate your answers on what additional information you would like from Keeper. You presented a lot of good stuff. I imagine many of you are interested in knowing more about the solution. Now, we also have a great handout from Keeper in the form of a PDF. As just mentioned at the beginning, that is in a handout section. Now, this PDF is a Keeper PAM data sheet, and you really should download it while we go through the questions. So I think right now Travis is ready to go. Travis, are you there?
Yes, Keith. Thanks for having me.
All right. Okay, so we have a lot of great questions coming in following your presentation. So people are keenly interested in Keeper, and we've got some really good things here. So, first question up. Muhammad wants to know how does IAM, Identity and Access Management, contribute to a zero trust security model? And what are the key principles of zero trust? So not a keeper directly, but certainly an issue that people are interested in.
So the identity and access management. So Keeper applies zero trust principles, basically through the use of role-based access controls, least privileged access, two-factor authentication, and so essentially that's going to allow the administrator to have top level control for that zero trust application, right? And I don't want to get too deep into the weeds with that. I mean, that's certainly that's a very large question. I don't think we have time
Right.
to go into it at a very high level,
Sure.
but yeah, I mean, essentially the admin will always be able to make sure that's implemented according to their security posture, and you can adapt as necessary. So it's always going to be up to the admin at the end of the
Right.
day.
And the standard disclaimer for zero trust always applies, in that zero trust is not a product; it's more of a mindset, a series of processes for doing security is worth
Right.
mentioning, I think there. So, all right, next question for you, Travis. Can you set sharing permissions to folders, or do those settings encompass the whole environment?
Yes, you can set sharing permissions to folders, and also with Keeper, some of the identity providers that we integrate with will use skim provisioning. So the advantage of that is when we're again talking about giving access to shared folders, you can actually have let's say your security groups from Azure Entra brought over to the system. Those can be linked to the shared folders. So in effect, your identity provider is managing the membership of those shared folders for you. So obviously, you always do have the option of adding individuals to the shared folders, but yeah, down to the shared folder level, you can implement the sharing. You can also do reporting at the shared folder level.
Great. I love that granularity. I want to remind everyone that the poll question is still up, and we're going to keep it up for a while longer. So make sure you continue to vote in that about additional information you'd like from Keeper. Okay, next question, Travis. Is there a way to share the access where the temporary user can use the password but not see it?
So when we're talking about a temporary user, I assume that's a one-time share. So a one-time share it's a read-only sharing mechanism, and that would be the case where somebody does not have a vault. So in the cases where someone doesn't have a vault, you have to give them read-only access because they don't have a browser extension. However, in cases where they do have a Keeper vault, you are able to conceal the password. It's what we call privacy screen. So privacy screen can be enabled at the team level, or it can be enabled at the domain level, and that will prevent the user from exposing the password or copying it to the clipboard. But you do need a Keeper vault within the tenant to do that.
Okay, great. Thanks for explaining that. Okay, up next, we have a nice specific question. I always like these. How does the timer work for self-destructing records?
The timer, basically, you're going to set the timer at a 5-minute level. It's going to be either 5 minutes or let me actually get. That's a new feature. You threw me up
Okay.
on a loop on that.
Well, we can also, yeah, they can also check out the website and get that specific information for that as well. Okay, here's one that sounds like it's coming
Yeah.
from yeah, from someone a little more old school. Does Keeper PAM, Keeper, the access management that you've been talking about, does it replace the need for a VPN? Really important question here.
Well, contextually, that depends on how you're connecting with the service. So basically, we have connections for remote sessions, which would be remote desktop, SSH, Telnet, VNC, Kubernetes, MySQL, MSSQL, Postgres, and HTTP, etc. So basically, if you're needing to make those remote connections, then Keeper's Connection Manager can act as a VPN replacement in those scenarios. And many businesses consider those to be more secure because you're limiting their access to those conduits, to those connections, and air gapping those connections explicitly down.
Okay, great. All right, I think we got time for a couple of more here, Travis. Next up, attendee wants to know, is this an on-premises solution? And I might broaden that just to say, okay, how is this solution offered in what sort of ways?
So the solution, there's ways of looking at that, and it's a SaaS solution in terms of the way that the data is stored. But what is stored on the Keeper side is ciphertext. So there are basically the way that people will look at it is everything is getting decrypted exclusively on the client's devices. So all the encryption keys that allow the data to be encrypted or decrypted are held exclusively on the client side. So when you're looking at it through that lens, our clients view it as being, fully under their control, and it's not a competing solution with on-prem. We're really just adding a layer of security to your on-prem, and you have the ability to do things like add IP address whitelists, which would restrict your users to only logging into Keeper on-prem on those specific networks. So again, I don't want to go too deep into a rabbit hole on that, but there are on-prem components that you can do as well. So if you want to set up ADFS to have your users authenticate with an on-prem server, so ADFS using our Keeper bridge for provisioning, all the components that are provisioning and authenticating your users would be on-prem.
Okay, great. Thank you. Finally, before we let you go, Travis, if someone wants to take the next step with Keeper Security right after this event, say, what would you recommend they do?
Yeah, just schedule a demo. We're very casual about it. It's not salesy. We'll follow your lead, and just make sure that we address your concerns, and we always make sure that it's a very positive experience. So a demo is highly recommended, and we can roll through. Even if you wanted to do a proof of concept, we can get through those fairly quickly as well.
All right, fantastic options here. So, Travis, I want to thank you for your time today, for your insights in the Q&A, for updating us on what Keeper Security is doing. It's always an innovative, forward-looking company, and I appreciate your time today very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Likewise, Keith.